Heavenly Father, we're just trusting that you're leading us through this book and you are speaking to us. We just ask that you will really make it clear what you are up to and what you want to say. That your word will speak to each of us and give us a new revelation of who you are. That you will give each one of us even a different revelation that we may be able to share with each other and grow in that and get the whole picture of who you are. And your holiness, O Lord, that we will all respond in worship and wonder. In Jesus' name we ask this. Amen. Book of Numbers, we saw a bit of the recap last time, but in case you missed it, so far where we are in the story is the Israelites are set free from slavery in Exodus. They're set free, they walk down, they cross the Red Sea, then they start walking down, they go to Mount Sinai down there, and that's where they are for the book of Leviticus. That's where God gives them the 10 commandments, that's where God gives them the law, that's where God gives them the setup instructions for the tabernacle and all kinds of stuff. Then in Numbers, they start walking up, and they should have gone that way. But in Numbers, they rebel. They say, no, we don't want to go because we're scared. And they are condemned to roam the wilderness for a period of 38 and a half years, close to 40 years, until that generation dies. Right? And so that's where we are right now in the story of Moses and the Israelites and the Bible. Okay? Numbers, what we learned last time was that the Israelites decided not to go in because for some reason they felt that God does not love them. And God had to say, the reason there are giants in the land, strong giants that you have to fight, is because I love you. And I do hope you're reading the book because it's such an interesting book. If you read it, you'll realize, unlike Leviticus, it's a mix of narrative and legislation. There's stuff happening, but there's laws also being given. Then there's laws being given, then there's stuff happening. And we're told around 80 times that God said to Moses. Right? So, which means that the author is God. Most of the words are God's words. It is God speaking to Moses and then Moses writing it down. And Moses, also in the narrative, he keeps a record of the travel. He keeps a journal of all that is happening. And strangely, in the book of Numbers, we're told that there's another book called the Book of the Wars of the Lord. And we have no other information apart from that, about that book. But it's there, and one day maybe we'll get a glimpse into it. But the structure of Numbers is that the Israelites camp somewhere. God gives them instructions. Then they move camp. And on the journey, they break every single instruction that's been given to them. That's generally the pattern. God gives instructions, they start moving, and we're told how those instructions played out in their lives. Except most of the time, they did not follow them. And they broke those laws. So when they camp, God tells them what to do. When they travel, we are told what they actually did do. And I don't know if you know this, that's the way you learn in your walk with God. Like you read the word and you can say, okay, I've learned so much, but unless you're put to the test, you actually don't know. Right? That's the way Jesus taught, by the way. He taught, read the Gospel of Matthew, any Gospel, Jesus taught them, and then you'll see that he was walking with his disciples and some of the parables that he taught actually gets played out in those parables. For example, Luke's Gospel, Jesus teaches them about the one lost sheep. If the good shepherd will leave 99 sheep behind and go after the one lost sheep. And then he goes, saves Zacchaeus, who's like super lost and people are saying, don't go. Right? You see this happening. You see the parables being played out in Jesus' life. And so God gives the command and then puts us to the test. And that's what's happening with these guys. They learned as they traveled and they journeyed. And we get to do that too. We get to learn as we journey with Jesus. And he teaches us through experiences, through other people, through the word, through testing. Back to Leviticus. Leviticus is where we get all the laws at Mount Sinai there. Numbers 1 to 10 is when they are still at Mount Sinai. Numbers 10 to 12, they move from Sinai to Kadesh there, point number 12. Then the people rebel. Numbers 13 to 20 is about God giving them laws again. Numbers 20 to 21 is the journey from Kadesh to that side, near Moab. That is Numbers 20 to 21. And Numbers 20 to 21 is the period of that 38 years that takes place. Numbers 22 to 36 is what God says to the Israelites as they prepare to go into the land. And then Deuteronomy continues from there. But that's the overarching theme of Numbers. That's the layout of Numbers. Right? So we'll just quickly dissect the legislation and the narrative. Today we'll just do the legislation. God spoke to Moses face to face and gave him laws. Now that's a special thing that happens only with Moses throughout that time. Like you'll hear of prophets, you'll hear of priests who get the word of the Lord, but it's always through either visions or dreams or through other people. Moses is the only one there who gets to talk to God face to face. And he gets clear revelation. And God says, I speak to Moses face to face, almost as if I'm talking to a friend. And it is only when Jesus comes, he looks at his disciples and says, I call you friends. Like, we have the privilege that Moses had, and nobody else did. And here Moses gets that special privilege. Moses met God and the people, when the people were away. The people were settled at the base of the mount while Moses went up the mount to get the laws. And then God tells Moses, I want to live with the people, so set up the tabernacle in the middle of the camp. And so the way God wanted to live was that God wanted to be at the center of the camp and all the tribes of Israel around that presence of God. The whole idea was that the center of the country, the center of their lives would be God. And he would be at the center. And the big danger with that happening, as it is the big danger in our lives, is the danger of becoming over-familiar with the things of God. Losing our sense of awe and respect and forgetting God's holiness, which is why he has to give these laws to them, right? And so we can look at the Israelites' lives and wonder how they messed up so bad and what was wrong with them, because we read that they were led by a pillar of fire at night and a pillar of cloud by day. Imagine you woke up and you didn't know the way to work, and there's a ball of fire just going in front of you and you just have to follow it. That's what's happening to them, and they're still messing up every step of the way. And we can wonder what is going on, what is wrong with them. And I think the issue was they'd become over-familiar. Like, some of these guys grew up with the pillar of fire just being there and the pillar of cloud. To them, it was the most normal thing ever. They didn't realize that it was a miraculous, wonderful, amazing thing that nobody else had access to. They got over-familiar with it. And we've done this before. Like, we don't get to see stars as much, but we can look at the stars in the city and go, whoa, that's amazing. But if we pause and think about it, stars are much more amazing than we actually think they are, right? We get access to see rainbows, not often, of course, but we look at it, we go, wow, so nice, we take a picture and then move on with our lives. But the reality of it is how amazingly God has designed all of it. Like, think about the concept of lightning or birds. There are creatures that can fly and we can't. We're so used to it because man has been able to accomplish airplanes and stuff like that, and we just see little sparrows running around all day. But we don't pause and think about how amazing these things are. Think about your max speed in your vehicle. What's the max speed you've ever hit? Bikers, come on. 100 on your bike. Max speed in your car. 175 in your car. Wow, all right. So let's go with 175, maybe our max. We are literally standing inside a ball that is spinning at 1,600 kilometers per hour. That is also spinning around another ball of fire at 30 kilometers a second. How does that not amaze us once in a while? Because we're so used to it. And that's the danger these guys face, that God was right there in the presence, in the center. And they could get so used to it that they could forget wonder. And so God gives them special laws that are not really moral or social, but they're laws to prevent them from losing their reverence of God. And so these laws can be classified generally as being careful, being clean, and costly. Careful, clean, costliness. Carefulness, for example, like they had to be super, super, super careful about the way they were placed around the camp. Like, it was very particular. Can you go to the next slide? Like, this was the placement of the tribes. And God gave these instructions. They had to position themselves this way. This is the tabernacle right at the center. That's north, south, east, west. Actually, I'll start with the north. The camp of Dan, 3 tribes. Camp of Ephraim, 3 tribes. Camp of Reuben, 3 tribes. Camp of Judah, 3 tribes. The entrance of the tabernacle was there. So at the entrance of the tabernacle, there were only 2 people who were camped. Moses and Aaron and his sons, Aaron's sons. The other 3 sides, the rest of the Levites from the tribe of Levi, the Kohathites, Gershonites, and Merarites, they were camped around that region. I know it's a lot of ites and names, but this is what it was like. Now, each of these tribes had a specific allotment, and you'll notice that the entrance was the camp of Judah. The only way to enter into God's presence was through the tribe of Judah. The only way to enter God's presence is the one who comes from the tribe of Judah, which is Jesus. Jesus comes from the tribe of Judah. He is Judah's descendant. And that's the way the Israelites had to enter. And if you look at the numbers, you'll realize that it's 150,000 this side, 150,000 that side, 108,000 this side, a much larger number that side, 186,000. And some of you all were there when we did this last time. But if somebody looked at this camp from the top, they'd see this east, south, north, west. It wouldn't be an X, it would be more like a cross. Or they'd see this. Right from the beginning, the plan has always been the cross. And so they had to be careful. God wanted them to be careful in positioning themselves in the shape of a cross. That was when they were camped. When they were trekking, they also had to be careful. They had special instructions for dismantling the tabernacle. They had special instructions of which tribe should get up first, which tribe should go last, how to wrap up the furniture, how to pick it up, in what order to pick up the furniture. They had to march in the same order every time. They knew when it was time to move because the pillar of cloud moved. And it was so careful, like it wasn't the most efficient way to move. And yet God said, this is the way I want you all to do it. And they moved when the pillar of cloud or fire moved, which is a picture of when God moves, we move. He's a moving God. He's not a stationary God. He's always moving. And so when he moves, we move too. And this is what God is saying. He's saying, be careful in our attitude towards the things of God. He's reminding his people that he is in their midst. And he had so many reminders set up that it's like he was trying to almost tell them, every moment of your life, you need to remember who God is. Like they had tassels on their cloaks so that every time they looked at it, just these threads, every time they looked at those threads, it was a reminder for them to pray. For me, for example, in my to-do list at the top of it, and I'm pretty bad at this, I have a to-do list called acknowledge him. And so before I get to the next task, that's the first task to do, acknowledge him. And that's what God was calling these guys to do. Set up tassels on your clothes. Write the law on your hearts. Actually, he told them to write the law of the Lord on their door frames and stuff so that when they looked at their doors, they would be reminded what a holy God he is. It was a very practical way of reminding the people about his holiness. And it was a very, very serious thing. If a vow was made to God, it had to be kept no matter what. It's all about carefulness. Then we have cleanliness, which is a pretty basic concept. Keep everything clean. Don't let it get messy. The camp had to be kept super clean. They were told to take a spade when they went to the loo so that they could dig a hole and then cover it up. Right? And so when diseases actually hit the land, it was the surrounding nations that died. And these guys didn't because they don't know why, but they were doing stuff that was cleaner than the other nations and they didn't even realize it. And God was telling them about just being clean, healthy. And there's a lot of purification rites in this because death is an unclean thing because God is a God of life and death is the enemy. And then there's costliness, finally. He's telling these people that it is costly to live in the presence of a holy God. He commands them to make sacrifices daily, weekly, monthly, and each sacrifice was costly. And we did this 2 weeks back, but the question still remains. Is our worship to God costly? What is it costing us? How much of our time is it costing us? How much of our resources is it costing us? If it doesn't cost anything, it may not be a sacrifice. It may be that something is being offered to you rather than you being the offerer. All worship costs something. We don't need to bring a ram, we don't need to bring a dove, we don't need to bring a pigeon, we don't need to bring a goat, we don't need to bring a cow. But that does not mean we don't have to bring a sacrifice. We get to offer sacrifices of praise and thanksgiving. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Offer sacrifice of thanks. Offer prayers as a sacrifice, whatever it is. And our worship gets to be prepared to be made costly. So that's the legislation. Stuff about being careful, being clean, and sacrifices that are costly. And then there's the passage that we read about the Nazarites. It tells us about a provision for people who are not priests. They had the provision to make a voluntary vow of dedication to God. Anyone could say that I want to be a Nazarite for a particular period of time. The conditions were, there were 3 conditions. Anybody remembers what those were? Don't shave your head, don't cut your hair. Don't drink wine or anything from the grape, and no dead bodies. Awesome, thank you. Those were the 3 conditions for remaining a Nazarite. No cutting your hair during that period, no touching grapes or grapevine or anything of grapes, and no touching a dead body. Right? Now there were people in the Bible who were lifelong Nazarites. Does anybody know who they are? Samson is one of them. Anybody else? This guy Samuel. Samuel was a Nazarite. I'm not sure if John the Baptist was. I have no proof of that, but these two are lifelong Nazarites, which tells me again, for those of you all who know the story of Samson and Delilah, when did Samson get weak? Why did he get weak? Because his hair was cut. Fine, all right. Why did the Spirit of the Lord leave him? Because he cut his hair. Fair enough. You go and read the story of Samson again. You will see that he broke all three of these. The cutting of the hair was the last thing that happened. Before that, he touched a dead body. Before that, he drank wine when he was dedicated as a Nazarite. And so it was all three. And so that's the story of the Nazarite. The whole concept was that the thing about a Nazarite now, notice that it says it is a voluntary thing that you do. It was not something that was commanded for everyone. God didn't say you must never touch wine ever in your life. God didn't say you must never cut your hair ever in your life. God did not say you must never touch dead bodies ever in your life. The priests, for example, they were not allowed to drink wine in the sanctuary of God. The priests were not allowed to touch dead bodies and enter the sanctuary of God. The priests were not allowed to do certain things in the sanctuary of God. A Nazarite, when they dedicated a certain time to be a Nazarite, during that time, they were not allowed to do, for that entire period of time, anywhere, what the priests were not allowed to do in the sanctuary. It was a way of saying, I take the Holy of Holies with me as a complete devotion to God. All these three acts are just symbols of complete devotion and dedication to God. Jesus drank wine, John the Baptist didn't. God had separate ministries for both of them. And so it's more of a thing of others get to do this, I can't do this. And so that's for you to decide with God about what those things are. But a Nazarite functions that way, to be wholly devoted to God, that when God says, don't do this, you don't do it. Right? Now, we're pretty much called to live as Nazarites throughout our lives. Not necessarily following these three conditions, but to be wholly devoted to Him. Not just not doing things in the sanctuary of God, but throughout our lives. And doing things that we're supposed to do in the sanctuary of God throughout our lives. We get to devote ourselves completely. Now, what's the point of all of this? What's the point of being clean, careful, and costly for us? Because Numbers is a weird book for us. Living in the New Testament, we can read it and go, what is all this about? I'm not going to bring a dove and cut off its head at the altar of God. Right? And so what's the point of it all for us? Today, there is a tendency towards an anti-ritual, casual approach to worship. Right? There is a tendency to believe that the spontaneity is all pure and all good and is controlled by the Spirit of God, while prepared and structural is so man-made. Numbers tells us that's not true. We forget that God is exactly the same as He was back then as He is today. And if they were to approach Him in awe and reverence, we are too. The book of Hebrews reminds us that He is a consuming fire. He has been, He is, and He will be. And we saw 2 weeks back what that means. When we gather, we get to bring a song, a word, a prophecy, a tongue, a revelation. We get to bring a prepared offering of worship. We must still come to God with an offering the same way these guys did. We must worship God according to His tastes, not ours. And the issue is that we're moving towards a world where worship tends to focus on individual preferences rather than God's preferences. Like Melly shared this reel recently about this guy talking about how the latest worship songs that come out today, even the scales that they choose are so inaccessible to general congregation members because it's only what performers can, the scales that only performers can reach. And we've moved from a congregational worship scene to performance based on preferences, as if we are the audience. But in a worship setting, it's always been God who's the audience. We are the offerers. We are the worshippers. And if we are to sacrifice, we are to do it together. Because in the end, it's all about pleasing Him. He's already made the perfect sacrifice. He offered Jesus on the cross. And Jesus on the cross was careful to do the Father's will. Like every step of the way, He made sure that He was so much that He was fulfilling prophecies. Like He said things because He wanted to fulfill what was written. And He was careful to do the Father's will in all of this. and he gave the perfect, he offered what was most costly there. He offered his life, his dignity, his own will, and his all, so that we can go directly into the tabernacle and approach him, not as a faraway God, but someone who's so close and intimate. Like the same book of Hebrews, New Testament, which tells us that he's a consuming fire, tells us that we get to come to his throne boldly because we have Jesus. He is above us. He is transcendent, but because of Jesus, he's also intimate in us, right here. So the question for us is to really ask him and ourselves, what does this mean for us? How do we live careful, clean, and lives of costly worship, so that we can avoid over familiarity and just be amazed at his presence? Father, if we've gotten used to you, please forgive us. There is so much more to you than what we see. So would you open our minds to see who you are? Give us more of you and blow our minds, Lord. Help us to get a glimpse of your amazing, amazing majesty. Let the things that you have created point back to you and maybe be amazed at the things that you are doing in our lives. Show us what it means to be careful. Show us what it means to offer worship that is costly. And in all of this, may we fall deeper and deeper in love with you and who you are. In Jesus' name we ask this. Amen. Hey there, thank you so much for watching this video, and we hope you were blessed by it. It would mean so much to us if you liked this video and subscribe to our channel, and also share this link with your friends. God bless you.